Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this braided wirework ring with beads as embellishment, and this is what it looks like. So you have your braid going all the way around, and then I've added in these little loops as well to give a bit extra embellishment to it, the actual braid itself, and then I've added these beads to give some colour to it. Obviously you can just leave it with the wire itself, that also looks really nice, but this is how I've made it, and it can look a little something like that on. Obviously I've not made this to fit. Just to show you, I've added the beads so they kind of sit on the front here to be the focal point of the ring. And then there's a connection point here where we connected the two ends of the braid, and that's what it looks like. So if you want to learn how to make this ring here, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be using. Here I have two different gauges of regular round silver coated copper wire. The first one is a 0.6mm, and this is the base wire for the ring. So it's quite a thin base wire, but because we're using multiple strands it's going to work. And then here is a 0.25mm wire, which is going to be the weaving wire basically we're going to add in the beads with. And these are both 2mm rounds, so quite delicate ones. I have some purple gemstones, agate ones, and then I have some copper metal spacer beads. So it's really up to you what you use, but let's get all the materials together and let's get started. So then first of all here, I cut 3 lengths of my 0.6mm wire of about 30 centimeters each, and these are all going to be used to make the braid. And then we'll need a length of about 50 centimeters of a 0.25mm wire here we're going to use to add the beads in with. And then we want to start making the braid, so I grab 2 of my lengths of the 0.6mm, and I want to start working from the middle. So I'll go to the point where I roughly have even tails on both sides of that midpoint there. And make sure the wires are lying flat next to each other. They don't want to start getting a bit of a curve in that midpoint here. So that means I'm bringing the two ends closer together and getting a curve in there. So something like this for now. Then I'm going to bring in my third wire of the 0.6mm, and then we just need to kind of attach this as well, because this is also going to be part of the braid, but just by itself. I'm just going to lay it towards one end there, over the top or the bottom of these two wires, right on that curve. Just for now, and then bring it around the back, making sure these other two wires that we were curving are still lying flat next to each other. And then I can just grab a pair of chain nose pliers here, or flat nose pliers, and basically make sure to squeeze this down a bit, tighter around those two other wires. Can also do that after. Squeeze it down a bit, and then just bring it all the way around again, because we need the long tail here to come downwards the same direction as the two that are lying flat next to each other, because like I said, it's going to be part of the braid. So it's just maneuvering this around a little bit until we're happy with how it looks, and obviously making sure that those two wires are continuously lying flat next to each other. So that's coming downwards now, and make sure if your wire's gone a little bit out of shape that you straighten it back out. So that one here could just do with being straightened a little bit. Just run it through your fingers. So something like that. So that wire is now attached. We have the single wire attached to those, you could say, double wires. And then we need to start the braid basically. So it's just a regular 3-strand braid. The only difference is obviously we're using wire, and also we have some of the length here where I'm using 2 wires together as if they were one. So that's all we really got to pay attention to. So just make sure that this point where I've attached that single wire is staying on the top, and then we need to start off the braid, and this single wire is coming down in the middle, so that's the middle section right now. So I'm just going to start on my right side here. Doesn't really matter where you start, but a regular 3-strand braid, I'm going to bring that in over the single wire because that's the middle one. And right now it's all a little bit loose still, so you just got to kind of hold on to it up here. So it's a bit fiddly, but right as soon as we have 1 or 2 stitches of the braid, it gets much easier. Bring that in over towards the middle. And then the next stitch is bringing the left one over that in towards the middle, just like a regular 3-strand braid. Making sure they're still lying flat next to each other here. So I'm constantly grabbing hold of these double wires, you could say, and flattening them out if I need to. Bring that over and in just like that. So we just have a bit of, you could call it a loop up there. That's kind of the beginning point of the braid. So one end of it. And then that's basically the braid started now. And then the next one we've got to take is this single one. And with that, we just continue making the braid in the exact same way. Just bringing them a little bit closer together there, tightening up that loop a bit. So I'm going to take this single one, and because it's still a little bit loose, I'm keeping hold of my end up there. I'm not adding in any loops yet. I'm just going to make a couple of stitches with just the braid, and bring it over and into the middle. And then basically just continue like this for a little bit. Take the left one over and into the middle, which is the double one, and again make sure you just keep them flat next to each other. So you get a couple of stitches of the braid here. So just do this for a little bit, because I want to start off the end, so kind of the connection point of the ring that's going to be the back, you could say, is a bit more neutral rather than when I start adding in the loops and obviously the beads as well. So just do this, and it really depends how large you need your ring to be as well. That's why it's a good idea to start measuring that on, say, a ring mandrel. So you could just take that, or if you don't have a ring mandrel, you can always just use your finger if you're making it for yourself. And then just take, for instance, like a scrap piece of cord or a scrap piece of wire, and then measure around the size that you need your ring to be. And basically that's the circumference there. And then you'll have that, you can bring it back out, and then you know that the length of the braid that we need is going to be roughly this. So you then have that to work with, so you can kind of figure out how long you want your braid to be before you start adding in those loops, and obviously eventually the beads, but the beads we add in after, because I want the loops on the braid to be kind of in the middle, with just a few stitches on each side before I have any loops. But then to add in my first loop here, because I've got to that point, this is what I'm using the single wire for. So this is the next wire that I'm due to bring over and in. That's why I know I want to add the loop before I do that, because I want the loops to be on the outside here. So what I'm going to do is just start to shape it and smooth it out a bit. And I want this to come back around on itself. So I'm bringing it around just like this here. Just gently, a bit at a time. Just working on it here, and then making this smaller and smaller, so I want it to be quite small. Obviously we don't want a big loop sticking out too much. Now so this is just going to be a single one because it's the first one. So just keep bringing it down. I like to kind of put my finger on it and a finger on the back, and then while I'm pulling a bit on the tail, so it keeps its shape, and I make sure it stays in the place that I want it to, and you can help shape it here along the way. So we're slowly getting there. And then into the middle, because then once you made that loop, this wire is then naturally going into the middle of the braid. So we've already kind of made that stitch. And if you need to, what you can always do is use some pliers to help adjust the loop, either round nose or some chain nose. If you're using chain nose, I don't recommend grabbing onto the loop too hard, because it's going to flatten out the wire and make it out of shape. But you can gently grab it and help put it into the right position or place or whatever you need it to be. So something like this, I'm quite happy with that. So that's coming into the middle now, and then we need to make the next stitch here, just like before. Continue the braid, so grab both of them wires together as if they were one length, making sure they stay flat, into the middle, and then the next one again stay flat and into the middle. You can see the braid is really forming now. And then we have the single wire again, where then want to add my next loops. In this case now, because of how I want my ring to be, you can do whatever you want to, however many loops you want to add each time. That's completely up to you. But on this one here, I'm going to add 2, because I'm kind of graduating upwards till I get to the very middle, and then I'm going to graduate downwards again. So again, same principle, I'm just using my other hand. Bring it around on itself to create that loop. and then make it gradually smaller and smaller. Make sure it keeps the shape nicely. But on here, like I said, I need to have space for 2. So I'm making it nice and small. You can always move your braid around as well, depending how you're comfortable working with it. Sometimes I like to hold it like this as well and actually use my thumb on there. It gets it into a nice shape and size in the right position. And once I'm happy with that first one, I've got to make the second loop as well. So I have my wire coming around again, and I'm just bringing it around in itself one more time in the same way, and basically just creating the second loop right next to the first one and just making it gradually smaller. Making sure there's not too much distance between them, but obviously that they don't overlap either, unless that's the look you want, but I like them to sit next to each other. So getting it right down there where I want it. And then I just want it a little bit smaller, I think, so they fit each other nicely. I can just turn it around here and see how it looks. Just want to make it a little bit smaller, and you can also use chainers to help kind of close it up a bit to help make it smaller. Something like that. Turn it around. I actually think I just want to make the first one a little bit smaller again, because now that looks a bit bigger than the second one. That's what I mean. You just keep adjusting this until you're happy with how yours look, because it's completely up to you how you want the loops here to look. So something like that, and it's again now naturally coming in over towards the middle there, and then you're ready to make your next stitch, and you basically just continue like this. So I'm going to take my next outer one here, bring that into the middle, and the next time I'm going to add in 3 loops, and that's going to be the middle one, and then that's where I'm going, after that it's going to add 2, and then I'm going to add 1 again, and that's going to be the whole midpoint of, well, the main part of the ring really, but that's just what I chose. You can add your loops however you want to. And this is then what mine looks like here when I finish the braid with the length that I need for my ring, and I've ended up with the single wire right there in the middle. So now what I just want to do is this wire up here that's kind of sticking out from that single wire, I just want to get rid of that. So all I'm going to do is grab some chain nose pliers, and then I want to cut off the excess there. So it's just basically the very end left. If you feel it, you can kind of probably feel the very end sticking out a little bit. So I'm just going to make sure to take my chain nose pliers and squeeze that right in, so it becomes nice and flush against it really. So it's not going to catch on your skin, in other words. Just make sure that that's squeezed all the way in. Put your finger over it so you can't feel it. And then what I want to do now is actually shape this braid into the ring. So I'll take my ring mandrel here so I can shape it around that, and then I'm just going to put my braid flat on the ring mandrel. I'm just going to start from the middle there and then start basically pushing the rest around it. So we're going to get that nice shape on the ring. Make sure it's all the way around so the 2 ends there meet each other. Nicely, just like that. So there we go. You can see that's going to fit perfectly. And then obviously what we want to do now is actually connect it as well. So what you can always do is go down a little bit in size and kind of push it tight, because then when you release it, it springs back a little bit, and then it'll fit the size perfectly. So just something like that here. We can always reshape it a bit if we need to, if it goes out of shape while we're working with this. But just for now we have this in place. So what I'm going to do now is use these tails to then connect through the initial loop there that we made. So the first thing I'm going to do here is take this single wire from the open end, and you just can straighten it out a little bit. And then I want to take this and bring it down through the loop on the other end. Just all the way through, then pull it. So when we pull it all the way through here, it brings the two ends together. And as we're working with it, you can always use your chain nose pliers to help make sure it stays in the shape that we want it to. So if I need to just put a little bend in there, and then bring it around, and then around the inside, you could say, so it's now coming basically through towards the inside of the ring band. And it's partly connected, but obviously it needs to be a bit more secure than this. So what I'm just going to do is leave it there for now, while I then also connect the other two ends. So to do that, we're going to basically be doing the same thing, but obviously working with both wires at the same time. So then I'm just going to take one at a time here. So I'm just taking my right wires first, again making sure to work with them as if they were one, and then we need to also bring them through that same loop. So I'm going to bring them around here and then take both of them together and go from the top and down through that loop, staying on this side. And then basically it's going to be coming down through the ring band. Make sure to bring both with you. And then also still remember to make sure they line flat next to each other as I'm bringing them through. So just do it gently, because we kind of want this to be in a way as seamless as possible. Obviously there's a connection point, but to blend in as nice as possible with the braid, really. So just move it around a bit until you're happy with it. So you can see if it moves around too much, make sure to kind of fix it before you move on. So I just want to bring it through a little bit more, and it can help to use your pliers because you can get a better grip of the wires, but also you can kind of usually get into places, tight little spaces that you can't really get into with your fingers and hands, especially because we are using quite a finer wire here. So like that, and then it's coming out there from the inside, and I'm just going to make sure to bring it out to the side here, pretty flat against the double wires there in that loop, just like that. And then we have these ones here left, and same principle, we need to bring them around, and then in this case as well we need to come down through the loop. I just need to make sure there's space in that loop because we have that single wire from the beginning of the braid, and I actually want this side to be coming on the other side of that single wire. So you might just have to move your wires a bit here. Get these ones out of the way a little bit. Move them further over towards the side, so we can get space in there. So whatever you really need to do, I'm going to grab that single wire and then just push it a little bit out of the way. Then I'm going to take these two, also bring them around and then down through that little gap that I just created. And again, together as if they were one. So I'm bringing that through as well, making sure the wires stay lined flat next to each other. And there we go. Just going to use my chain nose pliers a bit here and there, whenever I feel like it's necessary pretty much. And that's pretty much how we connect the two ends of the braid together, is by using these ends to go through that initial loop that we made. Now obviously we have all the ends left, so we have to then kind of get rid of them now before we then have a full complete piece. And then I'm going to get rid of the single wire first of all here. I'm going to take my flush cutters and I'm going to do it on the inside of the ring band. So right where this is kind of wrapping around, I want to cut off the excess But so I have just a couple of millimeters left in here from where it's coming out through that loop. So make sure you're only cutting off that one, and obviously not accidentally cutting into the braid or anything. Cut off the excess like that. Then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just grab that very end and then kind of bend it towards the ring band or all the other wires and squeeze it down, so that basically the very end of the wire is going to get nestled in between all the other ones in the braid, because that's how we want to finish it off securely, also with the other ones. But we also want to make sure that all the ends of the wire here, they're not going to catch or scratch on our skin, because obviously it's a ring, it's going to be on our finger all the time. And then the other ones, same principle really. I'm going to bring them around, and then basically bring them around so they're coming out kind of below where they're going through the loop. Then I want to get my flush cutters again. It's coming in from this angle instead, and cut off the excess. Again, making sure they're wrapped all the way around before I then cut off the excess. And just have about a millimeter or so left. Just cutting off those wires. Same principle, grab onto the very ends with your chain nose and then just gently bend them inwards towards the braid, you could say, and then just tuck them away, because that way again those ends are being hidden away and shouldn't be irritating your skin. And the exact same with the very final ones. Get them into the right position, cut off the excess like that, and then just grab the very ends and then bend them inwards, so towards the ring band really. And there we go. And that one just came out. And push it back in. So just maneuver it here until you're then happy with how it looks, obviously, but also keep running your finger over any of these ends. So obviously it's going to be like wearing the ring, so you know that when you're happy with it, you can't really feel them. It's not going to catch or scratch on your skin while you're wearing it. So this is then what the ring looks like now. So you could quite easily leave it like this because it's quite decorative with just the wire, I think. Have that braid going all the way around, just adding those loops in. But I just want to add in beads as well to add a bit of colour to it. Obviously that's completely up to you. So this is where we want to get in the length of the 0.25mm wire. And obviously also get the beads ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add beads along the top side of the ring that's going to be on show. I'm not going to do it all the way around because they're kind of just going to be in the way. But I'm going to start here from where I have the very first loop on one side. And just have a little tail to hold on to. And then I first of all need to attach this wire. So I'm just going to wrap around. This is around the single wire in the braid. So the one that we also made the loops with. I'm just going around that, right by that very first loop, right after it really. And obviously we have to come through, so we're basically going through the ring band whenever we're wrapping around this wire. And just attaching it there. And I want to then keep wrapping this a few times, first of all to attach it securely, but also we want to get to the point where we want to add in the first bead. And where that is for me here is I want my very first bead to be where that single wire is coming out through those double wires in the braid. So what I'm going to keep doing now is keep wrapping around that single wire. This is coming underneath the double wire, so you might have to flip it and work on the inside of the ring band. You can just keep doing that whenever you need to until I have this wire then coming out between those double wires there. You can see there's a little gap where that single wire is also coming out from. That's where I then want to add in my first bead. So I then reach that point there, we want to add in the first bead right in between that midpoint between the two double wires. So I'm going to take the bead I want to add, I'm just using my copper bead first of all, and add that onto my weaving wire here, and then let it drop all the way down And then all we want to do basically is continue wrapping the same way, just making sure the bead then stays in the place where we want it to. So it's laying just like that, and then I'm going to continue wrapping. So I'm wrapping this way around here, coming from below, wrapping across the top. But then I want this bead to sit just like this on the side of that single wire. So I'm just going to place it there and kind of put my finger on it while I then keep wrapping, because then it'll stay in place once we wrapped a few times after it. And because you can also keep them finding spaces where it's easier to wrap. So here, the wire that I'm wrapping onto is coming out towards those other loops. So I just have a gap here. I can just come up through that, making sure I don't get a kink. And then push it down towards the bead. Like that. And then just wrap again here. Like I said, just wrapping a few times to make sure that bead is going to stay in place. Up through the same gap. And then push it close. And then that bead sits just where I want it to there and adds that bit of embellishment. So that's how you really add in all the beads. The next bead I'm going to add is actually going to be in this little section with the double loops there, and I want to add my other one, so that's going to be a purple one. So I'm just going to get in the right position where I then want to add in that bead. And once I'm there, again I grab that bead and add that onto my weaving wire. If I can find a hole in the bead. It's a very tiny bead, so the holes are quite small as well. Let it drop all the way down. And then this is going to basically come across the bottom just below those two loops. And that's how I like to add the beads when I'm doing it kind of on the sides there. So you just then find where you want it to sit, and then you can come across to the other side here and continue wrapping around that single wire in the exact same way. But again, you then just have to figure out where to come through with your weaving wire. And you might have to flip it around so you're working on the inside of the ring band. Just like that. And that basically is going to stay in place just there. Now here I'm then going to move to the inside of the ring band. You can see that's where my single wire is crossing over the other wires. And then the next point I'm going to get to, I'm going to add my bead again in the middle where the wire is coming up through. And then just continue like this all the way to the other side. But this is just how I like to add the beads. You can obviously add them however you want to. So now that I added all the beads here, you can see it looks like this. Got that nice decoration. I've reached the point where I want to finish off this weaving wire. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. It's the same on both ends with the other tail as well. So what I'm going to do is, I've continued the wrap here. You always want to make sure after whatever bead, you have several wraps after it, because that's what secures it in place. So don't just cut it off too close to a bead here. But then I've continued my wrap. And then what I want to do is I'm going to cut off the excess here, but leaving a little tiny tail. So something like this. Cut it off. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, because we have that little tail sticking out. We need to tuck that in, but also what I'm doing is my wire is wrapping around the base wire in this direction here. So what I actually want to do is get that tail, squeeze it down, and then I like to roll my pliers while I have it squeezed down. So I'm basically forcing that end of the wire to continue wrapping around. Obviously it's just been cut off. And this then actually ends up pretty much in between two of the base wires, or the same base wire, but that point where we have the loop crossing over and under each other, just like that. And that gets rid of it completely, because it's not on the inside of the ring and it's not on the outside. So that's perfect to finish it off like that, and it'll last and be comfortable to wear as well, so not catch or scratch on anything. Obviously do the same thing with the other end as well. And then you'll have your finished ring. And this is then what the ring looks like complete. So you have obviously a braid with the loops, but then adding in those beads just add a bit of extra colour. Gives a really nice effect. And then it can look a little something like this on. Obviously I've made sure the beads are on the front, you could say, of the ring. So it's the embellishment in a way. So the feature. And then it's fully closed as well with that connection point. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. And thank you very much for watching.